Yeah, so I just thought it was cool just to call it Caledonian metal. I think people have this fantasy about these guys in cults that wear face paint and charge at each other and stuff.
Mhm.
Because I don't want them playing fucking jazz. I've already recorded something, which hopefully will be released this year, later this year, next album, all in Ukrainian. You've got me here. Going to be here for ages talking about beer. Oh, I've went blurry.
Hello, Andrew. So today we're here with Andrew from the band called Sir from Scotland. And Eddie, thank you for joining. And before we start, so I slightly proud today. I'm wearing my Drudkh shirt, and I am from Ukraine, and I know that you're a big fan. And
Yeah.
you were even at one point involved with Old Silver Key, that project of Roman from Drudkh, but also Neige from Alcest. So can you talk a little bit more? How did that come?
Well, I never actually got involved with the project in the end. Basically, I quite liked the old Silver Key release, and I spoke to Roman and just asked if I could be involved, really. And I think he didn't really want to do it anymore, so he was kind of like, "You can take the reins," and I was like, "Okay, that's strange, but okay." And yeah, nothing happened. So I was meant to do vocals, and I never spoke to Niche about Old Silver Key, so it was kind of just like an idea. But Roman seemed to be he didn't want to do it anymore, and he heard some demos that I'd written that were similar to that style, and he kind of was like, "Do you want to just use those songs as Old Silver Key?" And I was like, kind of shocked by that. But yeah, nothing ever happened after that.
How was your collaboration with Nish? Because he was a guest vocalist on Forgotten Paths.
Yeah, yeah, it was great. Yeah, just I've known him for many years. We're not like close friends or anything, but we've met each other a couple of times at festivals and when Alcest played in Glasgow. So yeah, I've always been a fan of Alcest. The first release, Le Secret, I absolutely love that one. That was my first kind of introduction to post black metal, if you want to call it that. Black, what's it called? Black wave, black gaze? I don't know. That kind of style. And it's got a kind of nostalgic thing for me. Like Le Secret's the first kind of combination of kind of post rock, shoegaze with black metal that I'd ever heard. So yeah, I really love that release, and I love his screams and his vocals. So yeah, it seemed natural to get in touch and ask if he'd guessed, and he was happy to do so.
Let's go to the to your band, one of your band, to Sir. So how do you? Am I butchering it? How do you pronounce it correctly? Because
Yeah,
it's a Gaelic word,
Saor.
Sir.
Yeah, yeah.
So what does it mean? What meaning did you put in it? Why did you name this project?
Well, it means free in Gaelic. And really, I just liked the look of it. Like aesthetically, it looked nice. I could see the logo idea in my head. And I just liked I liked the meaning free. That was it. Nothing too deep.
You call your music Caledonian metal. So for somebody who never heard the music itself, what is Caledonian metal?
It's just a kind of um genre tag that I gave myself because I always get classed as black metal, and I don't really like that because I don't really see Sur as a black metal band. I would definitely have black metal influences, atmospheric black metal influences there. And I grew up listening to a lot of black metal, but there's a lot of other influences in Sur, like obviously the folk influences. There's sort of soundtrack influences. There's even more kind of. rock, post-rock influences. So um it's a bit of a merger of different genres. So I don't like just to be classed as black metal. And I also think that a lot of true black metal fans wouldn't necessarily like the sound of Sur because of the um maybe the major parts and yeah, it's not about Satan and all that kind of stuff. So it's yeah, so I just thought it was cool just to call it Caledonian metal because it's basically just means Scottish metal. You know, it's the Caledonia is just like the Roman kind of term for Scotland, if you want to put it that way.
Do you see other bands now putting themselves in this genre, in this niche?
No, no, I've not actually seen any other band use Caledonian metal, to be honest. But then again, I don't really keep up with new bands, to be honest. I don't really have the time. Got a very busy life out with the band, so maybe there are. Who knows? Get in touch.
Let's talk about the latest album, Amidst the Ruins. It came out now almost a little bit more than a year ago. And now that you had the whole year to reflect, what are your thoughts about this album? Are there any things that you hear differently now that when you finished it?
To be honest, I don't really listen to it a lot because I play it live so much that I don't want to. I mean, I don't really go too deep into these things. I have the inspiration to write it, I record it, I release it, and then I move on to whatever else I'm doing. I don't like dwell on older albums, but I'm very proud of the album. Um, I think that the guest musicians did a great job as well. Carlos and drums and Ella did um, the folk instruments, and we had Angie. She did the string parts. She did that really well. So yeah, I'm really proud of the album. I'm really happy with who I worked with, and I feel it's probably you know, for me personally, I feel it's like a step above the last release. And yeah, so that's my only thoughts on that album.
So one of the songs called Glen of Sorrow, and it is about the massacre of Glencoe. And as a Scotsman, how personal is this story for you?
It's not like particularly personal to me. It's just quite interesting.
Mhm.
Quite interesting history, and most of the songs that I write about history, they're not really like personal. It's just the kind of interest in my history and my heritage of my country. Obviously, we don't really get taught a lot about these kind of things in school. We usually just get the usual stuff like World War Two and all that kind of stuff. We don't really get taught about like Scottish history, or at least I didn't when I was at school, which was a long time ago, by the way. So yeah, it's just basically I take inspiration from various things that have happened in history and also the nature and landscapes of Scotland.
Talking about the history of Scotland, do you also talk in your songs about some of the most known battles, some of the battles that were in some movies, like Battle of Stirling Bridge? And yeah, I remember watching movie and I heard you in one of the interviews that in the movie they don't have the bridge, so that is
Yeah, that's that's kind of the key point of the Battle of Stirling Bridge. But it's a good movie though, Braveheart. But it's pretty much like fantasy in a movie. It's not. It's loosely based on history, but not very accurate. But it's good entertainment. Um, but yeah, as I said, sometimes I just read about a certain time in history. For example, Origins, the album before, was kind of loosely based on the Pictish people. Um, and sometimes I don't really directly write about events. It's just more inspired by that time and the events surrounding it. I don't sometimes I don't really like specify things in songs. So yeah, I just yeah, just influenced by all that kind of stuff.
I was last year in Stirling and went to the bridge. And for me, and yeah, they have the stone bridge there right now, but the battle happened when they had the wooden bridge. That's why
Mm,
it collapsed under the weight of armor of the
yeah,
knights. For me, it was kind of fascinating how river, not that huge, like it's normal sized river, but it's nothing like it's not a huge or very deep river, but at those times, that river could stop an army.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was pretty. Was it not pretty marshy as well at points around the river? And I guess a lot of soldiers falling on top of each other isn't a great thing either, with really heavy armor on. So, but yeah, it's a really cool piece of history, but it's only a small piece of the country's history, and I think it's because of Braveheart and stuff like that. It's really at the forefront of things when there's so much
Mhm.
more history than that. It's obviously important, um, very interesting, but I think people have this fantasy about these guys in kilts that wear face paint and charge at each other and stuff. And yeah, that's not true. I think there was a film that came out maybe a few years ago with it was about Robert the Bruce, um, Outlaw King maybe I think it's called Outlaw King. And it's lot more like historically accurate. You can see the soldiers in like armor and stuff like that. And it's a little bit more historically accurate for the time. So if you ever get a chance to see that, it's a quite a good film.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I think it's on Netflix.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I'll find. I have not watched it. I'll find it. I'll watch it. Yeah, just standing there in like Stirling Castle, and there's a sign. Okay, if you look there, like Bannockburn happened right there where the golf course is. Now the battle happened right there. Like history is like everywhere where you look around.
Yeah, definitely. It's really a really cool place.
One of the tracks on the last album is like not metal at all. We just talked about Caledonian metal, right? So like Sylvan Embrace is pretty much like folk tune instrumental, and you also have cellist Joe Quail, who is invited musician. So how was that collaboration born?
Again, I just messaged her and asked her to play on it. I like her stuff. Saw her at Inferno festival in Norway, and she played the cello and did all her kind of loop things with the pedals, and it was really, really cool. And it didn't seem out of place at a metal festival, believe it or not. A lot of metal heads in that room were just like mesmerized by what was going on, and it was quite heavy, funnily enough. Like the sound was really loud and heavy, so that was really cool. But I've heard her stuff before. I know she worked with Winterfilliff, band from England, my friends. So yeah, I just mailed her, and she was like, "Yep, cool." And then I sent her the acoustic track, and it said "Work Your Magic" basically, and she added so much atmosphere, and I'm really happy with how that track turned out. Um, Maybe going back to the earlier question about if I could change anything on the album, maybe like Sylvan Embrace, I maybe shorten a little bit because it's quite a long song. But I mean, that's just a fleeting thought.
You compose everything yourself. Yeah, you have guest musicians, but all the instruments, like guitars and like even the flute and key parts, are those like all composed by you as well?
Yeah, well, on this album, Amidst the Ruins, Ella composed some of the flute parts,
Mhm.
and I composed some other parts, and we some parts she changed a little bit from my original idea. When it comes to like the drums, I usually have a like MIDI map of drums, and it's very basic. And I send it to like Carlos or whoever the session drummer would be at the time, and I just tell them to like do it more naturally, add in whatever fills you think are appropriate. But keep um keep the sort of same idea that I have. Don't change it too much. But the guitars, the bass, the structures, the vocals, and stuff like that. Yeah, I compose all of that stuff.
how much freedom do the session musicians, guest musicians have?
I guess they have to stay in a kind of like box
Mhm.
because I don't want them playing fucking jazz solos and stuff like that. But but I if I don't compose the part, I say I have an idea and this is how I would like the idea to sound. Can you come up with something like that? And they'll send me back something, and then I might say, can you change that about a little bit at this point? So there's a lot of process that goes, it's a long process to do that. But yeah, I'm happy for them to improvise some parts if they think it will improve it. But at the end of the day, I always get the kind of last say in whether or not it's whether or not it fits what I'm looking for.
And for some of the instruments, I think there's always an option to, like, not for you, but for other musicians, they would use just like keys or some software to create like flute sounding or bagpipe sounding melodies. So, what made you decide to go with real instruments?
From like roots onwards, I used like I recorded the tin whistles because I wanted to learn how to play tin whistle. Believe it or not, on roots, I hadn't even picked up a tin whistle. I literally just like a few days played about with it, and I was like, okay, that sounds cool, and I recorded it. Um, so I'm not like a professional player. But yeah, the the keyboard virtual instrument kind of thing. I have used like pads and like ambient stuff through that, but I don't think I've ever used any um folk instruments. Maybe in Origins, I used a kind of pad with flutes, but apart from that, um, I can't think of any time that I've used like fake. I say fake, so you know what I mean. Not
Synthesized.
not real ones.
Mhm.
But it's probably just because I like the sound of it. That's like more authentic. It feels more real. Even on some songs, it might not be 100% perfect pitch or whatever, but it's got that real feeling to it. Whereas using a keyboard can be a little bit kind of robotic, I guess. It can feel a little less real. Depends what you're going for though, because a lot of bands really pull it off well. But obviously live we have Ella who does the bagpipes and the whistles and stuff live, and I think people like that kind of authenticity live. They like to see it being played live. Because on the last album we have a lot of strings as well, but you can't bring like a cello player, two violin, you can't bring all these people on tour. So to have Ella do the whistles and the pipes and stuff, that brings a kind of authenticity to the sound.
Yeah, you could probably bring all those people and instruments, but once you hit larger level and you have more finances to do that.
That's not going to happen. So
I went to the Vardruna show. I don't know if you're familiar, maybe familiar with Vardruna from
yeah, yeah,
Norway.
yeah,
Uh, they when they toured, they brought over here like huge pipes, like the folk instruments from Norway. It sounds great. It looks very great as well. So
yeah.
maybe one day you'll do the same thing.
It's very expensive to travel with. I
I'm
can't im-
sure.
I can't imagine going on a flight with one of those things, you know, all the costs of baggage and stuff.
Yeah, and handling. I think
Yeah.
you don't want to people throw those things around.
Yeah, I know, I know. We've been quite lucky to be honest. We've got we use like ink it's called Enki cases and they're really sturdy and I've never had any issues because previous cases I've had smashed up. We've had guitars broken in half and stuff. It's been crazy. But you have to go if you're traveling a lot on airlines, you have to keep in mind that they're going to be thrown about.
Mhm.
Like they know what the baggage handlers don't care what it is. You can put as much fragile tape on it as you want, but they don't care.
Let's talk a little bit about your other current project, Fuath. Uh, Maybe again, I'm butchering another Gaelic word.
Fuath.
Fuath. So, how did that start, and why did you need another outlet for your creativity? Like, how different is that from Sir?
Obviously, it's not got any folk elements in it. Um, the themes are a little bit darker. Um, it's probably more. Um, it's more influenced by like the stuff I listened to when I was younger, the earlier black metal stuff, and um, stuff that I don't feel that I could put in sewer at the moment. A lot more dissonant and darker and faster and raw. So it's just kind of like an outlet for the my darker side, if you want to put it that way.
Do you give shows with that project as well?
We have, and we're doing 3 shows this year. We're doing one in Velfoot Wood in Cumbria, which is amazing. It's just like a forest, so it really suits the music. We're doing a show in Glasgow, and then further in the year we're playing at Bristol at Bristol Extreme Fest, I think it's called, and Rotten Christ are headlining that, so that should be pretty cool. But it's not like we don't play as many shows as Sur. Not because I don't want to, it's just I like having very limited shows with it. And once we play that, it's a whole new thing of having to rehearse with everyone again and learn all these new songs. And it's we all have, as I said, busy lives, families, jobs. So trying to get everyone together to do that's a bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? I'm really happy with the last album though. Really happy with that. But at the moment, I'm actually trying to play less shows because we played too many shows last year. So this year's a little bit more quiet in terms of playing live. Oh, I've went bloody.
Autofocus is failing us.
Yes.
So in the name of the band, also in name of the songs, you use Gaelic. Are there ideas to also use Gaelic in lyrics to have the song or at least the verse in one of the songs?
Nah, I don't speak Gaelic. Like I've just saw the words and thought they were interesting and really worked well with what I was looking for. There's a big Gaelic community in Glasgow. Maybe you know that, and there's obviously not a lot of speakers in Scotland, but it's going through a kind of resurgence at the moment. We never got taught it at school. And it was very like only recently could you really access things to start learning how to speak Gaelic. But yeah, as I said, it was just when I was younger, saw the words and thought, oh, that sounds cool. I like the meaning behind that. So yeah, I don't think there'll be any Gaelic on it unless I get someone that can speak it to do something on an album.
Maybe guest musician who actually knows the
Maybe,
language.
yeah, maybe that could be something in the future, but it's not something like I really want to like push or anything like that because I don't speak it, so I'd feel, it's like me doing an album in, Ukrainian. Like, I don't speak the language, so I'd feel kind of stupid to even try it, to be honest. I'd have to be at least partly fluent in the language to feel confident to pull something like that off.
I feel like in Ukraine we would be very open and very happy to have somebody who is not native speaker but try to learn and even sing a little bit or speak a little bit.
Next album. Next album. All in Ukrainian.
Sounds great. Yeah, there are a lot of I guess, but when I was in Scotland last year and you learned a little bit about the history, there's definitely connection. You have your own history with imperialistic neighbor. There is a war in Ukraine going on right now with that neighbor, and there were centuries of Russia trying to erase the culture and history. I think one of the reasons people in Scotland do not speak Gaelic primarily is that English imperialism. And so your band is also called free, like the name means free. So what's your stance on Scottish independence? I know there was a referendum quite a while back, probably 10 years ago now.
Yep.
So do you think
Um,
it's a good thing for Scotland potentially? Yes, no. What's your stance?
um, I'm on the fence at the moment. Um, let's just say, well, if we go back to the first referendum, I did vote to leave the UK. I voted for yes. Um, since then, a lot has changed in the political landscape of Scotland, and I personally don't like the political parties that are pushing for yes. So I'm in a little bit of a dilemma because I probably, if it got to the stage that we had another referendum, I'd really want to research a lot of it. I'd want to see the benefits, I want to see the pros, the cons. I want to know more about certain things. Because the first time I just kind of went with my heart rather than my head, I would say. And this time I'm older and wiser, so well, maybe not wiser, but I'm older. And I'd like to learn a bit more about the what would happen if we did break away from England. But yeah, I don't really like using England as some sort of like imperialist nation either, to be honest, because Scotland was part of the empire. In fact, basically a brother in the empire, the British Empire, that is. So I don't believe that, I think people have a different view abroad than people here about this kind of stuff because as I said, we were part of the Empire. We did a lot of bad things with the Empire, so we're not like, innocent. Scotland, that
Mhm.
is. We tried to do imperialism ourselves. We tried to go to Panama and these places and try to do like, settle there and stuff like that. So, yeah. And people always mix up like history as well, I think, because, you can think about the Wars of Independence. Oh, disappeared again. God damn it. Sorry. You can think about the Wars of Independence back in the day. That was England v Scotland, two kingdoms. And yeah, England, they were pretty bad to us. But stuff like, the Highland clearances and stuff, there's a lot of Scottish people involved in this, on the other side. There was Scots that, you know, saw themselves as British, not Scottish, and there still is to this day a lot of people that see themselves as British, not Scottish, or they are Scottish. They just see themselves as British above Scottish. So, yeah, it's very complex, very complicated. I wouldn't really, compare it to the war in Ukraine, to be honest. I think there's a lot of different history there. Um, it's very clear who the aggressor is there. Um, but yeah, it's very complicated with Scotland and England. So with the referendum thing, I would just say sitting on the fence at the moment doesn't mean you hate your country, and it doesn't mean that you're less Scottish, by the way, because this seems to be the narrative that if you voted no the last time, you're some sort of traitor to the country, which is not true because we're voting on a very big thing here, a very historical thing to basically, break up the United Kingdom, essentially. So, there's a lot of things to think about, but I do agree with them on the points of, the Westminster, the London elites that, rule over everyone. They're all corrupt as fuck. Like they're basically all of them are disgusting pieces of shit that have horrible ties to people like Jeffrey Epstein and all of this. We all know this. Everyone knows this. They're all corrupt to the core, millionaires telling us how we should live. So I can see that point. And the other hand, we have our own parliament in Scotland, so we kind of make our own certain laws as well, and we have certain like freedom to do what we want. And the government here is just as equally as corrupt. It's just every government is, but it's really yeah, it's a very complex issue. Could go on forever about it, but But I think everyone sees the name of the band and just assumes, oh, he's definitely
Scottish
100%
nationalist.
independence. And I did say I voted yes in 2014, so I guess that's why people think that. But um, yeah, I'm on the fence. Always heart is leaning yes, though. So I'll leave it at that.
It's great to see Scotland being a huge supporter of Ukraine. Last year, I saw by the parliament there is Scottish, EU. I think yeah, Scotland even has EU flags flying, even though Brexit happened.
Yeah, Scotland. So here's part of the complex thing I'm talking about.
Mhm.
We got asked, do we want to leave the European Union? So the vote was a British-wide vote or UK-wide vote. Um, and the majority of Scotland voted to stay in the EU, but the rest of the UK voted to leave. So we got dragged out. They say we got dragged out against our will, but if you want to talk legal terms here, we didn't because it was a UK-wide vote. So it's very complex. It's very, it's very yeah, complex issue and people get very passionate about it. So the current ruling party, they would love to rejoin the EU. I think quite a lot of political parties in Scotland would like to rejoin the EU. And obviously the majority of people voted to stay in it. So I think they feel a bit bitter about the outcome of the Brexit um, vote, but I can see why. It's tough when you've got your own parliament and you're getting dragged out of things against your own will. But we are, yeah. The Ukraine support is really big here. I don't know if you know our manager Joe, but he does a lot of work. He goes to a lot of protests. He was at protests the other day, I'm sure. So he does a lot of fundraising as well. He does metal shows for like fundraising for Ukraine and yeah. But we always kind of joke with him and say he's like like in Japan they have weebs, you know what I'm talking
No,
about?
what
Like
is
the
that?
people
No.
the people that are obsessed with Japan and they're like
Uh-huh.
over we call him the Ukrainian version of that because he's so obsessed
Mhm.
with Ukraine.
Yeah,
But just as a joke.
he reached out to me on Instagram, and
Yeah.
I saw also a video of you playing at Think Festival in Lithuania, and
Yeah.
you were wearing the shirt.
Yeah, Kilkim Zaibu, that was.
Mhm.
That was actually a guy that has a charity. I don't know if it's a charity, but it's a fundraiser that goes to all the metal festivals. And he asked if I would wear the t-shirt, and of course, I'm happy to wear it. I totally support Ukraine. Um, but yeah, if you want to delve deeper, you should speak to Joe because he knows all the stuff about it, and uh, you know, I'm just I just know the kind of basic kind of story, and I can see Ukraine should I hope Ukraine win, and they will win. Um, and it's just a shame to be honest. It's just crazy. I can't even believe it happened to be honest with you. When I heard about it. I was like totally unexpected to me. Probably not unexpected to Ukrainians, but um, it's crazy. And then we've got all these wars happening everywhere. It's just the world's just fucked, now.
Yep, unfortunately. Well, let's talk about the pretty things, about beautiful nature of Scotland. So
Nice things.
in your videos and even like when we look at the artwork you and the posters like vinyls, they include beautiful posters with nature, with you in the nature. And in one of the videos for last album, it was like video for Amidst the Ruins. We can see Isle of Skye, Old Man of Storr, and then the Kiltrock waterfall. Are you an outdoorsy person? Do you like to go on the hikes? And is that source of your inspiration as well?
Definitely. I would say probably like more so when I was a bit younger. I was pretty obsessed with hill walking and camping and being outdoors, even from an early age. When I was younger, I loved to just be outside and play in forests and all that kind of stuff. Um, Unfortunately, it's basically with life. It's quite hard for me to get outdoors and go hill walking. I still do, but not as much as I used to when I was younger. But yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I can drive 20 minutes from here, and I've got beautiful mountains and hills and landscape. So we're very lucky here that we can just from Glasgow, you're half an hour to the start of the Highlands, and then 2 hours you're up, and 2.5 hours you're up in Glencoe, and we're really lucky to have these places, and um, yeah, I just wish I could do it more, but um, when the kids get older, maybe I'll start going camping more and getting out and about again. But yeah, the only downside is the midges. I don't know if you've experienced them, but my
Thankfully
God,
not. Yeah, they were not out yet. We
yeah,
were there end of May last year.
yeah, they're pretty bad. They go for me. I don't know. I must have some sort of fucking
Tasty
something in my
blood.
blood that they love, but yeah, they really go for me. But yeah, as I said, I've always been obsessed with like nature and landscapes, and I think it like my, if you want to call it awakening, for this kind of stuff was, when Lord of the Rings came out, the first film, and I saw those epic landscapes in like New Zealand. And I was just obsessed. Like, I loved the film, but the landscapes, I was obsessed with this. And I went on a family holiday that year because I was only like, what age was I when was it? 2001 the first one came out. So I must have been well, 13, 13, 14 when the first film came out. So still really young and influenced by a lot of stuff. And I loved those films, and we went away a family vacation up north, and it was snowing, and I seen the mountains, and then that's when I was like, "Oh, this is on my doorstep!" Like these amazing landscapes, because for some reason I lived 13 years and never noticed these things, and then all of a sudden I was very aware. And my dad likes hill walking, and I went with him a few times. We went camping as a family, and yeah, so it's a huge part of my life, and it's a huge part of my music as well to be inspired by these things. I don't really like busy cities and towns and stuff. I really hate them, so I like to be away from all of that and the peace and quiet.
Imagine that you can pick any location in Scotland to play the show, play the concert. It can be any setting. What would you choose?
Um, Hard question. Um, Probably. hmm, maybe like Glencoe somewhere, like maybe the Three Sisters in Glencoe, which would be a logistical nightmare, which would never happen because the council wouldn't let us. But if you could sit, I always used to go by there in the car, and I used to think this is a great place for a festival in these beautiful mountains, and there's a car park, even though it's always busy. But can you imagine like a festival there? But that's total fantasy because you would never be allowed to do that because it's protected, and like the locals would hate it, and the council would be having heart attacks. So you'd never get the permission to do that. But if that was, in Fantasyland, I would love to just do a concert there, like with these mountains, around you. Like it would just be epic.
Kind of like in your music videos, but actually be there and not just
Ex
photoshopped in there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So Scotland is also very well known for whiskey. Are you a
Mhm.
whiskey person? Do you like
Nope.
whiskey?
No, no, no. I don't like whiskey. Everyone asks me this question. I'm not. I'm a beer.
Stereotype.
I like beer. I'm a beer drinker. Yeah. I just never really liked whiskey. I've tried a few, and it just not for me. Maybe. as I grow older, I'll get a taste for it. But at the moment, I'm just, I like my pints.
Then I'm a huge beer drinker as well. So what styles do you prefer? What are your favorite breweries? Maybe you can recommend some cool breweries from Scotland.
Right. Well, definitely not Brewdog, who don't exist anymore. Well, I think they still exist. I think they just got bought over. But
Las Vegas still has their location. They have
right,
rooftop
okay.
bar right in the middle.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the guy took lots of money off people and then became a millionaire and then ran off with the money, which is
Yeah,
not very punk, I don't think.
yeah.
But
Didn't they do
um
like a crowdfunding investor thing, and now
yeah,
pretty much
yeah,
investors left with nothing?
yeah, they were left with nothing. Yeah. So that was really nice of that guy. Uh, but my favorite beers, that's a hard one because there's so many. You know, it's very generic answer here, but I never used to like stouts and stuff like that. But ever since I went to Dublin, like you know what I'm going to say, Guinness. I just love Guinness now, and I never ever liked Guinness. Like I was always lager, IPA, even like your golden ales. I quite like them, but never stout, never like Guinness. And I love like I've tried Guinness. I like Murphy's. Um, what else do I like? I quite like William Brothers, their brewery. They do quite a lot of stuff like Caesar Augustus and stuff like that. The IPA lager hybrid, that's really nice. I like a beer called Schiehallion. I don't know if you've tried that. Um, I can't actually remember the brewery that does that. Um, no, I've lost the brewery. But I like a beer called Schiehallion, and they do one called what is it? Twisted and Bitter and Twisted as well. There's one called that. It's really, really good stuff. What else do I like? God, you've got me here. I've got to be here for ages talking about beer. I used to love IPAs, but I really have went off them for some reason. I think my tastes have just changed. Like as I said, I really like Guinness now and stouts. And I used to love IPAs, but now when I taste IPAs, people used to make fun of IPA drinkers and just say it tastes like perfume. Like now that's all I taste in IPAs, and I'm like, oh shit, like because I used to love drinking IPAs, and that's all I can taste when I try IPA now. Um, but yeah, I do like that the Caesar Augustus.
Mhm.
That's really nice. The Lager IPA hybrid because it's just a really nice taste. Um, I think. Um,
As for IPAs, there are even like memes, like the guy licking the sap of the pine tree, like and
yeah.
saying that's pretty
Oh,
much the
well,
drink IPA.
see, it's weird. Like I used to drink it all the time, and I've had a huge break in drinking, like in general. And then I came back to IPAs, and it just didn't taste the same to me. It was like it was too much, too strong for me. God, I'm trying to think of other beers that I like. I mean, we're going for standard, you're just out for a pint standard beer. You can't beat Tennent's. Come on, Tennent's Lager, easy peasy. It tastes like piss, but it's decent. Um, I actually have my own pub as well, which is quite fun. I have my own. I don't know if you know the Perfect Draft.
No, I do
It's
not.
like the beer machine, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I get kegs of stuff sometimes. Try out some new kegs. You can go to the shop and buy like a keg. It's like maybe 6 to 8 pint. Well, probably 8 pints within a keg. And it's a lot cheaper than going to the pub. It's like £2 per pour. So it was definitely a good investment. But yeah. Also, I don't really like. I love beers and stuff, but I don't drink anywhere near as I used to because I'm just too old now, and the hangovers ain't worth it. Like,
I
it's
feel you.
yeah. I would love to be back when I was 21, sinking 8, 9 pints, and waking up the next day, going to work. But yeah, I think that my limit's maybe like 5, and that's pushing it. Um, but yeah, Guinness is my go-to now. I quite like Murphy's. Murphy's is good. Um, but yeah, what about you? What's your favorite beers?
Uh, these days, it's typically hazy IPA, so New England style IPAs and sours.
Right.
Vault City in Scotland, it has great sours.
Because there
Right.
used to be a lot of well, maybe there still are, but brewing was really popular for a time, and I feel it's taken a huge decline recently. There's still some good breweries, but a lot of them have disappeared and went bankrupt and stuff. So the kind of craze has died off, I guess.
Yeah, it's also a big challenge because a younger population, they don't drink. They don't
That's
find it cool and they don't need to drink. And that's a
that's
big blow to any alcohol industry.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I've noticed that, and I've got close friends who are like security guards and bouncers and stuff, and they say that the younger generation might go and have like a beer and sit there all night with that one beer, or they won't drink, which is quite a good thing, I guess, because Scotland's just got a terrible alcohol culture. We drink far too much. I mean, I started drinking when I was like 14 or something like that, like beers and stuff, so it's not good. And, you know, I'm really more into fitness now as well. I go to the gym quite a lot, do weight training, and I eat healthy and clean. So beer's my kind of treat. If I'm away with the band, I'll have a couple of beers, but it's better that way.
Yeah, when I moved to US at the age of 21, I told them, hey, here you start drinking at 21. In Ukraine, we stop drinking at 21.
It's true. I, I kind of feel like that when I'm with the bands. Like, there's only uh, like Joe, our manager, when he comes, and then Martin, our guitarist. We're the only like Scottish guys because the other session musicians are from like the rest of Europe. And like the cultural difference is insane because when we're in the airport and at like 6 in the morning, it's like pint, you know, and they're just like, oh, you're drinking very early this morning, or like, ah, it's fine. And then till later that night, still drinking, and they're like, how do you just drink and function? Or like, it's in our DNA.
Yeah. I mean, like if you drink Guinness in the morning, it's so thick, it counts as breakfast.
Yeah, that's true. But I've learned the hard way, like drink lots of water in between and eat lots of food and you'll be fine. But there are times I slip up. You're having a good time, one too many pints, and it's a headache in the morning. But it's very true what they say. When you get older, it gets worse, and that's a fact.
Thank you for your time today, Andy. And like for the end, what's next for Sir? Are you already writing new material?
So I've already recorded something, which hopefully will be released this year, later this year. I can't tell you too much about it, but it's going to be pretty good. Also, so I've recorded that, and I've also recorded something else. Well, I've started recording something else after that. So there's two new things hopefully coming. Um, to be honest, after that, I just want a huge break because I feel I've released so much in the last like couple of years. So who knows? Maybe I'll take a break from the band for a while. That's always been in the back of my mind, just to spend more time with family and you know live life and maybe take a rest and gather more inspiration over the years. And maybe I'll come back and do something else. But yeah. So we have a couple of festival shows this year coming up. Brutal Assault, Summer Breeze, all these kind of things. And yeah, I've got two new things coming, so just look out for them.
TheMetalList.com. Subscribe.